Well, I'm delighted to be here, joined with the director and producer of the film Music is My Life. My name is Aviva McClure, and I'm the director of the Cascade Festival of African Films. I would love to just go around and introduce ourselves before jumping into some questions. Mpumi, welcome.
Yes, you got it right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Mpumi Mbele. I'm a director and writer and producer of this film, Music is My Life. I come from a background of doing music videos, TV commercials, TV work, series, and this is probably the most beautiful and interesting project that I had to embark on.
Excellent, thank you. And Carolyn, thank you for joining us. Carolyn's the producer of the film.
Yes, evening or good morning, depending on what time you are. We're in Johannesburg, South Africa, so it's evening. Thank you very much for selecting our film to be screened at the 33rd annual Cascade African Festival. Yeah, I'm the producer of Music is My Life, Joseph Shambalaba and Ladysmith Black Mambazo.
Fantastic, thank you so much. I would love to hear, just as an opening question, about what drew you to want to make this film. What is important to you about making the film, and what does that piece of music history mean to you?
I think for me, it was, I've never seen a representation of a Black man in the way that I've always wanted it to be, you know, and to look at Joseph Shambalaba holistically, his family values, his love for his kids, the legacy that he built that he will forever need for the next generation, attracted me to the story. I felt like we just never had an opportunity to show stories of like these values that are created in Black communities that get to live on for next generation. And his music was like a backdrop of my childhood, and my father was very connected to his music. His music reminded him of home because my family were in exile. So when I started gravitating towards doing long form, he was the first person that came into my mind that I was very interested in telling a story. And as soon as I started embarking on research and getting to understand the man and his values, his spirituality, and who he was, then that made it even more interesting to tell the story.
Thank you.
I think for me, I always tell the story of, I saw a film where the story really was about Baba Shambalala and Ladysmith Black Mambazo, but it was told from a point of view of Paul Simon, called Under the African Sky, which was done in 2012 or 2013, I think it was, by a very well-respected American director, Joe Billinger. But it really tracked the history of Graceland 25 years post Paul Simon coming to South Africa during the 1980s, which was actually during the cultural boycott and at the height of apartheid, when everyone obviously was supporting South Africa to become free. And so there was the cultural boycott at the time. So the film went on a 25-year journey where Paul comes back to South Africa to see Baba Shambalala and the others, and sort of talks about why he came here and the impact that it had on his life. So the film was really much told from the point of view of Paul, and I felt very passionate that we needed to tell the film from Baba Shambalala's point of view and his life. And we'll obviously explore the musical genius that he was, but he was a critical, he's been one of the most, I'd say, obviously celebrated musicians from our history of South Africa. We won a young band won a Grammy on Sunday night, Zakes Bantwini, which was fantastic for world music. But, you know, Shabalala and Ladysmith have won 5. So he came from a very humble beginning, and he grew and he lived through a very difficult part of our history and during apartheid. But he survived and he became this icon, global icon. So it was just fitting for us to tell his story from a South African point of view.
Carolyn, you know, your response to that one and what you added to Mpumi is so connected to our festival, because our festival prides itself on sharing Africa through African lenses, as opposed to having the point of view from Western directors, which I think is just so beautifully shared in what you just told us. So thank you. I would love to hear, I mean, the film had so much footage and so many interviews, and it felt to me like teleporting a little bit back and forth in time, which really to me provided like this rich cultural and historical understanding. So I'm curious to learn a little bit about that approach in gathering footage, and what did you learn from this process?
I think the direction for the film was to reflect the truth of Bab Shabalala. You know, it was no longer at some point about myself as a director. It was like reflecting what he went through and what his life was. I mean, I look back now, there's other stories that I would have liked to tell within the story. You know, I went to the film with this anger, just like what Carolyn said. You know, Paul Simon came here, I felt like he took the culture, you know, proper cultural appropriation, made more money, got to live, you know, the most amazing life. And I felt like, you know, the band did not get to do that. But when I started engaging with them on a personal level, it was amazing. And starting to find footage that Joseph Shabalala had, personal footage that he had. I then started realizing that him and Paul had a just, honest relationship. They were friends, you know, like there was pure friendship in them. They really genuinely loved each other, you know, and that like then shifted my narrative in telling the story, you know. So gathering the footage was like very hard. It was like it was beautifully because every time, you know, you listen to almost 500 audio tapes, you find something new that you didn't even know about this man, the level of genius that he was. And that then broadened the story even deeper, you know, and even the spirituality aspect of it. It's very rare that we look at African spirituality in a way that we appreciate it. It's normally looked at it in a very dark format, looked at it in a scary format, you know. So I wanted to embrace it, show you these landscapes where it comes from, and show you the beauty in the landscapes where it comes from, you know. Like Carolyn already said, you look at his upbringing and you never think that he would become the person that he became. But it was written, you know, his father gave him the name Begizizo, which means the one that will see the world. And I mean, this was like impossible when you think about it from the people and the community where they were coming from. But like somehow, there was this belief that he'd be the one that would take our stories as rural Black people and show it to the world. And he stuck to that, you know, till to his last days. He stuck to his truth as an African Black person to take it to the world. And for me, that's what he wanted to share. And his love, he was a man full of love. You know, he genuinely was full of love. Even us spending time with him during his last days, you could feel his love, even although he couldn't be able to verbally say it. So I just wanted to tell the story from his point of view, not from my point of view.
Thank you so much. And I know I appreciate you making time and space for this interview too. I know it may be a little difficult to hear, but I think that that's the nature of like having these conversations from around the world, you know? So what you're saying is coming through, and just to kind of reiterate what you said, so that folks can hear it maybe a little more clearly, is just the namesake and this beautiful opportunity that the world has, because we have this world traveler, right, who brought this beautiful presence like to every continent, really, right? And I'm hearing, I can't remember the name connection, but it was the one who travels the world, and that really sticks with me as well. Carolyn.
Becky Sizwe, is that right for me? Yeah, Becky Sizwe. I think also to add on to your question about how did we approach gathering the footage and interviews. So Baba Shabalala, interestingly, and it was a very sad story, as you see in the film, he has to leave school at a very young age. His father is murdered. And they're living on the white man's land, although it's not actually the white man's land, it's actually their land, but they get kicked off as a family and they have to go, and he has to leave the farm, leave school, at maybe after having gone to school for 5, 6, 7 years max, not a long time, maybe just primary school. He leaves and he goes to work in another part of South Africa with his brother. And that's when he starts to sing, and he's a self-taught musician. Everything you hear is 100% self-taught. He never studied music. He was just naturally incredibly talented. And as Mpumi said, it came from a very, very deep spiritual place where he would sleep at night and then he would wake up and he'd just write and dream. But in gathering the footage, he was an incredible self-preservation of his own history and of his own archive. So he recorded his day-to-day life on small little old-fashioned audio tapes. So we're talking the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, an old-fashioned little tape. And he was also very prolific. He wrote a lot. He wrote both in English and in isiZulu, which is his language, his mother tongue. And he also recorded on video. So as Mpumi said, we spent maybe 2 years going through archive. It was such a huge amount of archive, being able to just find the sort of what were the kernel pieces of his life, because unfortunately, by the time we came to make his film, he had, from dancing on the stage over the many years, he had suffered problems with his spine and he wasn't well. And so we weren't able to really interview him in the last 2 years of his life. So while we spent a lot of time with him, we could feel his spirit and we could be with him as a human being, and we got very close to him and his family. We had to rely on his history, and thank God he had this archive that he had preserved. And so Mpumi selected all the pieces that would then tell the narrative. And over and above that, we then had to go on a journey, as any filmmaker does, to find the archive to then support what he was saying. So it did take us a huge amount of time, and we learned a huge amount about him that we didn't know, that actually the process unfolded for us, and we would never have known that with just normal research or talking to people, because it was so personal, and he recorded such his own personal point of view, and the use of music and how the music symbolized certain periods where politically couldn't be overt. So he had to be very careful in the lyrics that he told, but they had multiple meanings. They weren't just Utando, I love you. It was actually about hope, and trying to give people a sense of hope that there will be a future where Mandela will be released and ultimately Black people will be free. And that's what he sort of preached. He was also very religious, so he was very committed to the bringing people a positive hope and a message of love and survival.
Yeah, just to add on what Carolyn said, it was something that was never, even us, even I was not aware of his level of politics. I looked at his music in one landscape. I just thought it was like these love songs, these beautiful love songs. And then once we started diving into research, then I was like, oh my goodness me. It's as shocking as even his son was like, he really thought Mama Temba was a love song. And I mean, one of his best friends, Sipho Sticks Mabuse, didn't believe me. And I said, you got a tape where he says, no, it's a song about hope. He said, no, it's a love song. So it just tells you about the level of intelligence of this man, that he could write songs that you will have to decipher yourself. And I mean, it was also very political songs, because where black men were put into mines and where they were put into hostels, that's where like black men were forced to stay so that they could work in these big cities. So he wrote songs about it, the pain of black men that were forced to be kept into these environments and not being able to go home, and the pain of missing their families, missing their wives, missing everything that they know about their lives. And he wrote these songs in ways that even when you listen to them, you wouldn't understand. But for some reason, people in the community understood it. So again, for me, it was like wanting to reveal that level of intelligence, that he had. I mean, you think about Bob Marley, how he wrote songs. You think about Fela. You think about all these guys, and I feel like he's just like that level of intelligence as a black man.
Mpumi, so beautifully said, and I feel like part of that, the African and African diaspora artist experience, is creating work that is like the layers of an onion, right? It has this like surface kind of expression, but there are so many layers beneath that you can continue to discover. And I think with that, I'm curious for both of you, if there was a lesson somewhere in there, wrapped in those layers of an onion, that you feel personally you are carrying into your life. Like, what were some lessons that you learned along the way in making this that connected to you in a personal way? If you're interested in sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it really, and I mean, it's still something that I'm still really, like, it punched me before, like, I'm not gonna lie. It really punched me on an emotional level and spiritual level. And I guess it hit later on, because I guess as filmmakers, we never talk about what the process of the film does to you after you finish making it, and it really hit me, and it required me to kind of go back to my family farm and village and really reflect, on it, and really connect with it, to fall in love with it again, because at some point it just hit me so hard that I just lost the love for it, and then and question the deeper levels that this man went through creating this music, and the love that he had to create this music, and it then made me realize that it was. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're losing you a little bit.
Yeah, you're coming in and out. We have what's called load shedding in South Africa, where the power unfortunately has been going out every 2-3 hours. So I think that's why Mpumi's not in a great area. Maybe the power's gone. Oh, you're coming in and out.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah.
You guys froze there a bit. Oh, and that's really bad. Okay. Yeah, it made me just reconnect with myself, basically.
Yes, I hear that reconnection with yourself, reconnection with your homelands and your family, and that you're still really processing what it meant to make this film.
Oh
And that
yeah,
sounds like a long
load
journey.
shedding just happened.
Yeah, for me, I think I learned so much about so many different aspects. Obviously, I knew Ladysmith Black Mambazo music, but I really didn't know the man. I didn't know his family, his sons, his wife, his children that aren't in the band, the lineage that he carries from the 1960s, 70s when he started the band, his nephews, his cousins, whoever joined him losing his brother, being murdered by a white policeman, then losing his wife. And he's just his personal journey. And I think for me, I think he epitomized like this man who was a family man, and the importance of family and how important family is. And here today, he's got 5 or 6 sons that are in the band, and they all sing like him. And they have this talent like he has, and how important family was to him, and how he gave to not only to his own family, but he also gave to his community, and how important he was always giving. He wasn't a man that hoarded, he gave out. And when you meet people in the street where he comes from, which is a very small town in South Africa, Ladysmith, it's in a rural community. He made an impression in that community, and he never ever left his roots. He was always very firmly committed to the land, culturally to his own people, but at the same time embracing South Africa and everyone, whether you're white, black, colored, Indian, whatever you are. He really spoke to everybody. And there are not many South African musicians, to be honest, that can cross not only race groups, whether it's gender, whether it's age as well. So he was a very powerful figure. And spending the last 2 years with him of his life, and being with him in the last 6 weeks, especially watching him, sadly, he went into hospital, and he then slowly but surely obviously passed away, and we were with him every day, and his wife. It was like one was really connected to him on a different level, and you almost feel like he's with you every day, even though he's not here. And telling his story and being able to share the music that he produced to the world is a privilege that one you can only go away feeling enriched in your life, that you would never have had that opportunity. I've made many films about political leaders or well-known people, but Baba Shabalala was a much more spiritually connected in terms of the story, and in terms of his culture and his music, and as a country, and the transition from the pain that we came through to the hope. And I think he symbolized so much of what South Africa went through and where we are today.
Thank you. And I think that kind of beautifully leads us into some of the ideas that I had for this last question for you around what you hope audiences continue to learn after watching Music Is My Life. I'm hearing, just that the commitment to giving back to community, the commitment to family, and also reaching across racial and cultural differences. I think there are so many similarities in the experience in South Africa and the experience in the US with regard to that cross-cultural connection and reach. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more, if you're willing to share, about what you hope audiences continue to do after watching this film.
I hope they really get to. I hope they really get to connect with with themselves and get to understand themselves, because he was constantly questioning himself, but also pushing himself, you know, and also whatever you're from, whatever background you're from, what he proved that it's possible wherever you're from, whatever systems are against you, you know, you can still prosper, you know. And it so resonates with the current situation, you know. And when we're making the film, there was Black Lives Matter and Black people were fighting for their space, and like went through. He's one of those people that fought for the similar, like it felt like things haven't moved, you know, like change hasn't happened because he was fighting for that, and here we are years later still fighting for that. But he never stopped, you know, he never allowed that format of oppression to defeat it. He was like, this is who I am and this is what I believe, and I'm gonna constantly prosper. So I hope everyone that watches the film, regardless of their race, regardless of their background, regardless of their gender, they will look at themselves and be like, yo, this is who I am and this is what I want to achieve. If this man did this from where he was from, with the challenges that he has faced, you know, his brother getting killed, you know, by a white policeman, but he still had no hate. He still did not hate. He still had this loving relationship with Paul Simon. He still had amazing relationship with the people where he performed his concert. So you know, there's hope at the end of the day. You know, like it doesn't matter what you're going through, and I hope the people that watch the film get to see that like there's definitely hope. You know, that's what I hope people take.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Mpumi, I want to repeat what I heard you say for audiences because it was just so poignant. I heard you say that, you know, that constant connection and pursuing excellence, pursuing this dream and this hope in the face of oppression and never giving up. That's something that we can all walk away with, regardless of race or gender or where you're from, because we have this story of someone who rose up through all of that. And I heard you also make the connection to Black Lives Matter movement and just the importance of, you know, the support around the Black community too, with regard to nourishing Black lives and African diaspora stories throughout all continents. So hopefully I got that right. And yeah, that was just such a golden nugget. So I appreciate you sharing that. Carolyn, how about for you? Is there anything you'd like to add with that?
No, I think you summed it up really beautifully. And as Mpumi said, I think he was a man of excellence. His music was his life. And that's why it's called Music Is My Life. He lived, he dreamt it, he slept it. You know, he'd wake his sons up at midnight to make them sing. He'd wake them up at 2 a.m. Music was his life and he lived it. He really embodied it both on a spiritual level and on a musical level. And I suppose, just for the audiences to learn about the man that he really was, and just to see a side of him they might never have seen. They might have seen him perform many times because, you know, in America that the band performed for many years. So and they still perform. So people are, you know, they see them regularly, but they never really get to know who's the man behind the band and what did he go through and how they got to where they are today. And while they've won 5 Grammys, they're still very humble and they're very committed to where they come from, and they're very committed to their community. And as you say, Black Lives Matter, they're very committed to a sense of where they belong and making sure that people respect them and give them the respect that they deserve. So I think on that level, it's really just a beautiful journey about an incredible musician, obviously a black man with black music that is very unique style of his katamia that many people can't sing without any instruments. Yes, they do use them sometimes, but really just that raw voice and everything he gave his heart and soul to. So that was what I would hope they would learn.
Awesome. Thanks, Carolyn. Well, I'm curious, just one last kind of brief question. What projects are next for you so that we can keep an eye out as a festival for what you have coming up next?
I'm interested in fiction at the moment. I'm really trying to venture into that, but I'm also again interested in this complex black man, that like Carolyn said, how Bab Shabalala was presented. It's not our eye. So I'm very interested in retelling some of the stories that we told in a lens that it's not coming from us, as the people that are from these roots, like that are connected to them from the soil. So yeah, I'm just really looking at some of those stories. There's one that I'm very interested in at the moment. So I can't say it because I don't have rights for having got any access to it. But yeah, it's again another icon that I'm really interested in telling the story. Complex man, and very interested to find out who he was really, but also really looking at fiction to see how can I really look into that world. So yeah, you'll see, watch the space, I guess, we'll be posting it pretty soon. Or whenever.
That's great. We'll keep our eyes out for sure. Awesome. Carolyn.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we just finished this film really, and now we're going on the festival run. So our aim obviously is to get into as many festivals as possible and to sell the film as well globally, so that we can pay back all our investors, which is critical as a producer. So that's the first aim, is to make sure we can make a sale in the US, and we hope, like your festival in Portland, we're in the Pan-African Film Festival starting today in LA, and we've been invited to the American Film Institute in Washington on the 17th to the 25th, or 17th to the 30th of March, as well in, I think, Springtown or Spring Circle, just outside Washington, DC. So that's great. So we're looking forward. The film's also in competition for first feature for Mpumi, so that for Pan-African Film Festival. So let's see, we'll know on the 18th if we win or not, which would be great for us. And other than that, I'm one of 4 directors. We have a company called Free Woman Films. We mainly tell female-driven stories. We have 2 feature films that are currently we're looking for finance for. One is Get Happy with a young female director, Loazi Mvuzi, and another film called Extravagant Ways to Say Goodbye with another female director, Lisa Kun. And yeah, we're just in pre-production with a TV drama series about 4 young sort of teenagers who land up getting sent to a reformatory, and they have to deal with their social sort of economic issues of their lives, which we're about to start shooting. So yeah, so there's lots of things in development.
Yes, that's fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. And on behalf of all of us here in Portland watching the film, thank you so much for sharing Music Is My Life.
Thank you for inviting us. We're very honored, and we look forward to the day when it's going to be screened so we can engage. Thank you.